Okay, good evening, everyone. The time now is exactly 6:30 p.m. Today's date is June 1st, Tuesday, June 1st, 2021. And this is a meeting of the Scituate Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee. I will start off with the Governor's Declaration. In response to Governor Baker's declaration of a public health emergency and the related emergency executive order dated March 12th, 2020, Town of Scituate public meetings shall meet remotely until further notice. This meeting will be recorded by Scituate Community Television and can be viewed live on Scituate Community Television Facebook Live. The recorded meeting will be available the following day on Comcast Channel 9 and YouTube Scituate Community Television. Okay, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. Do I have a motion to call the meeting to order?
I move to open the meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I will call the roll. Reverend Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Risha.
Yes.
Vice Chair Secor.
Yes.
Ms. Yassin.
Yes.
Who am I missing? Oh, Ms. Dre.
Yes.
Ms. Dre. Okay.
And Ms. Swopes currently is absent.
Okay.
She should be on, though. I actually spoke to her this afternoon. Oh,
Oh, there we go. Wait. Okay, we've got her coming up right now.
Okay, let's wait. She'll come right up and then we'll be like, do you want to start the meeting?
Ms. Swope is a co-host, so she can unmute herself.
Okay. Ms. Swope, we're voting now to call the meeting to order and you are the final vote. Would you like to call the meeting to order?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so with that, I will call the meeting to order. I'm trying to double screen here. Let's start with safe space norms tonight. This is a safe space for people of color and for underrepresented people and communities. Any comments that are inappropriate or have an animus in racism or bias will not be allowed. We will turn off your sound if your comments are offensive to the meeting. This is a safe space where people can bring up challenges and questions without fear of repercussion or hostility. Take the learning, but leave the story so that people feel comfortable sharing their experiences. Assume best intentions. All participants are embarking on this journey at different starting points. Listen, read, and be kind. Use respectful language. Ask when you are unsure, and administrators may remove anyone with inappropriate contact or acting inappropriately. Okay, so there also is a closed captioning button, which I'm sure we will have at the bottom of the screen to turn on or off any captions that appear on your screen. I generally start with a tribal acknowledgement of the Wampanoag tribe, which were the original inhabitants of the land that we're having the meeting on tonight. But I was reading around about the Gayhead Wampanoag in Aquina on Martha's Vineyard and got kind of lost in it. So I did not prepare anything today, but I do want us to acknowledge that. Okay, let's begin with the acceptance of the minutes. Does anyone have any corrections to the minutes, additions, changes? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain.
One change I'd like to make is just
Okay.
not in the minutes themselves, but in the acceptance of minutes in the agenda. It said 5/20/21. It was actually 5/18, which I didn't notice till today either.
Okay, thanks for
That's all we're
pointing that out. Yeah, I'm looking right at it. Okay, so we will make that change.
Yep.
Anyone else? Anything else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion for the acceptance of the minutes. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, wonderful. Is there a second?
Second.
Awesome. All right, I will call the roll. Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Dre,
Yes.
Vice Chair Secor,
Yes.
Ms. Risha,
Yes.
Ms. Yassin,
Yes.
Reverend Stewart,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So with that, the minutes are accepted. Okay, we're doing really well tonight. We're going to move directly into public comment. I will start. I wanted to mention a racial equity seminar training that the Massachusetts Municipal Association is hosting, and it begins on June 21st. It's kind of towards the end of the business day, 3:30 to 5, and there are 3 parts. And I did send the information to Ms. Yassim to include it in the minutes if you're interested in looking that up. That's number 1. Number 2 is tonight I have invited Ms. Crawford, Ms. Michelle Crawford, who is the director of Scituate's METCO program, to present to us and inform us on the METCO program. So I'm going to turn the stage over to you, Ms. Crawford.
You need to unmute yourself.
You're muted.
Thank you. I'm going to share my
There you
screen.
are. Yep. Wonderful.
So I'm going to start this off by trying to gauge what people think METCO is. We have a Jamboard right here. And how that works is, I'm waiting for it to load, is that you go to this sticky note right here and you write whatever it is you want to write. And it sticks onto the board. So I'll give a quick minute for that of what people think METCO is.
I don't think we can access that, Michelle.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Oh,
Sharing this way.
You're just sharing your screen. We don't really have access to that.
That's right. Let me put it. Oh, there's no chat. Never mind. I'm gonna.
We can just,
rather than chat.
We can brainstorm aloud, but
yeah, we can just tell you out loud. That's
If
okay.
people are okay with that, because I'm not sure how many people could unmute.
Okay.
While
Yeah,
we-
I mean, I can start. I think METCO is a program that brings children from the city to experience schools outside of the city. And that's pretty much what I understand it to be. What does anyone else understand it to be?
I mean, that's my view as well. I should know it better because my kids have been friends with some of the kids that come from Boston. I do know that it's quite a commitment by the parents and the family. I mean, these kids, they endure. I mean, look, I hate driving to and from Boston once a month, and they do it every day in a school bus, right? So, and they do it to hopefully have the opportunity to, and I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way, but attend better schools maybe than they otherwise would in the public school system in Boston.
I would
I'm going
add to
to
that.
share- Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to add too that it's a great opportunity for the students here in Scituate to get to
doubt.
experience more diverse children from more diverse backgrounds and different kinds of backgrounds than what we have here in Scituate, especially in terms of socioeconomical situations.
Okay. I'm going to share a short video on what METCO is. In fact, I already have it.
This was the national landscape in which the
I don't know why this is not going to full screen.
This
Sorry.
was the national landscape in which the METCO program was birthed, a nation ripe with racism, full of misguided intention, and ready to burst. In the early 60s, Boston parents were becoming increasingly frustrated with inadequate. In the early 60s, Boston parents were becoming increasingly frustrated with inadequate educational facilities and
Didn't have new crayons. We had a box of old nubbly crayons. Pencils had to be collected at the end of the day so you would have enough for the children for the I call it complete official neglect.
Many of the Negro parents believe that a predominantly Negro school is inferior per se, but we here in Boston do not believe that premise.
The Racial Imbalance Act of 1965 made the segregation of public schools illegal in Massachusetts, but Boston's all-white school committee refused to comply.
If the implementation of the racial imbalance law is allowed to happen in the city of Boston, then we should be on the streets marching to save our city.
Black Boston parents led protests, rallies, and direct confrontations with officials. They organized boycotts, community schools, and even their own busing program within the city called Operation Exodus. They were determined to get their children the educational opportunities they deserved. Meanwhile, some families in the suburbs began to see the need for their children to integrate with children of color.
Some of these towns recognize the racial disparities in the country, so do open their schools up to students from Roxbury, Dorchester, students of color. So this is really the beginning of METCO.
METCO has grown to become the nation's largest voluntary school desegregation program. Each year, the state of Massachusetts provides the funding for about 3,000 Boston students from racially segregated neighborhoods to enroll in suburban schools that are racially isolated.
METCO is basically a way to prepare kids for the real world. And the real world isn't all white and all black and all male or all female. It's everybody working together to make this world a better place when you leave it.
When people are educated in the same classroom, they break down their own stereotypes of one another and then give each other an opportunity. And that is what the MEC program does. It builds friendships and it actually breaks down racial barriers.
This is a wonderful opportunity for our children to experience the diversity that exists in the world. Now, you can give lectures and read books about diversity, but it's much better if you actually experience it.
Whenever you can have diversity of thought in your community, that's important.
When Boston resident students have the opportunity to integrate a school district seemingly devoid of color, it does bring up other issues. METCO students often find themselves in classes where they are the only students of color.
There's a certain level of trust that parents have to have with a district, with METCO staff, with educators, to put your 5-year-old on a school bus in the morning to leave their community to go be educated by folks that they're going to get to know, but maybe not folks that are their neighbors that would have been at their neighborhood school.
The challenge is that I don't often get to see people that look like me around here. And for better or for worse, that affects how I function. I've learned a lot of patience. I also learned how to just navigate through the world, which is a really good skill to have, especially going forward in the future.
Things have happened to students that involve race and that involve who one is or what they look like. I think what I'm proud of is that we're willing to say, wait a minute, let's pause. Let's reflect on what happened and learn from it and grow from it.
We are part of a grassroots movement then and a grassroots movement now. But now the grassroots movement is about changing people's minds and mentalities.
I want our students to feel that they've learned about different people, they've learned deeply about themselves, and they now believe that they can impact the world in a very positive way.
And those are the ambassadors who make
I'm sorry that the transition back and forth is not as smooth as I would like it to be.
Yeah, it was a wonderful video, though.
I can share that video individually. I can email it later.
Wonderful.
So I'm just going to open it up. What surprised you about that? What didn't you know based on what was shared?
Michelle, I wasn't surprised by it. Like Nikki said, I think it was an excellent video.
Thank you.
Yeah, the historical piece was new to me, not in terms of what was going on, but just in terms of the people that were involved. But yeah, that was new to me.
Michelle, when did Scituate start with the METCO program?
Years after it started in 1968.
1968 in Scituate?
in Scituate. Scituate, Hingham, and Cohasset started the same year.
Oh, good.
Because I know that there are students whose parents have gone through METCO through the years. And so this is a long-standing commitment that Scituate has. And again, as a retired teacher, our METCO program is a very valuable one, and I think one that is essential for Scituate to be able to experience. I feel it's a real cultural enrichment for us to be able to include students who are coming from both different physical surroundings as well as different ethnic or background surroundings that really help our students who are living in a kind of almost a very small bubble be able to broaden their perspectives. And that's so important for our kids as they get ready to, again, I like that part, you're getting ready to see what the world is.
How many students, Michelle? How many METCO students are in the Scituate system?
So I would challenge us to say that all of our students are having a METCO experience. They're all METCO students. So our Boston resident students, we have 66 students this year.
And how does that spread across the K through 12?
So we have 30 students in elementary, about 20 students at the high school, and the rest are at the middle school.
And Michelle, has that been the 66 number Boston residents? Has that been, I mean, what's the trend line look like?
We haven't gone over 70 in the last, since I've been here anyway. And actually, in a couple of years before I got here, it hadn't gone over 70.
Is that by design or?
So we have a per pupil allocation in how we get funded right now. They're trying to change that, but right now we get funded per pupil, and we cannot really go over, and we get funded based on 3 years, a 3-year average of the number of students that we have. So it's the highest number over 3 years or something to that effect. So we can't go much over that, is what I'm saying, unless the town chooses to eat the cost. And I can show a little bit about that in a bit. So we already learned about this. Where students are coming in from Boston to address racial isolation in the suburbs, the 33 or so suburbs that METCO serves. At any given time, there are probably almost 9,000 kids on a waiting list. There are only about 300 seats per year around 33 districts. And at any given time, there's about 3,100 kids who are attending schools as Boston resident students. It's not based on financial need or academic performance or anything else like that. It's really a seats availability kind of program. So we won't open a new classroom if what I do every year is I ask principals and the superintendent, what do we have for available seats in these given grades? And they give me a number, and what I do is I fill the number of graduates and a number of students that we're losing due to charters or moves out of Boston, because you have to be a Boston resident, or who are going to exam schools. And I try to backfill that way.
When do they need to start? Or I guess, like, what's the latest that a Boston resident can, because all the kids that I've known, I mean, my kids have known since 2nd grade. So
it's an easier transition if a kid starts earlier in elementary school. And that's the social emotional aspect of things. It's just an easier transition if it happens earlier in elementary school. The later it gets, the harder it is emotionally for a kid. And academically, it can also be a challenge, because what we have here in Scituate is different than a lot, not all, but a lot of Boston public schools.
And Michelle, do they get to choose what town they go to, or do you just go and you say Scituate has X amount of spots in each grade open, and then it just comes through a lottery, or how does that work?
It's a lottery. The only thing that doesn't really work as a lottery is sibling preference. So if a family has one student in Scituate, they would, we try to keep families together, so the other children in the family will get preference to be seated in Scituate. But for the most part, people don't have a say. In fact, you don't have a say. It's a lottery.
But there's almost 3 times as many kids on the wait list than there are enrolled.
That's correct. And we changed our, so a lot of districts prefer to take younger kids. So it's hard to place older children. So, and it's no longer a years long waiting list. It's every year a parent has to reapply now. Before it used to be, as soon as a kid is born, a parent goes out to METCO headquarters and signs up their child. But now it has to be an every year thing, much like how charter schools do their lotteries.
Okay.
So I wanted to share a little bit about the demographics of what many students are coming from and what they're coming into. And you could imagine the impact that could have on some students. So this is Boston versus Scituate. And the next slide is going to be Massachusetts in general. These are all of our districts. We are considered a medium-sized district with our numbers. And here's a little bit about funding. So in addition to the per pupil allocation that we get from the METCO grant, we get transportation funding plus Chapter 70 money. And if a student is an ELL or has special education needs, that funding also follows them.
So this is money that comes into the town?
This is money
based on the allocation from Boston?
So the per pupil allocation is a METCO grant that we get from the state. Transportation funding is also from the METCO grant. Chapter 70 is a DESE thing, and ELL and special ed is also through DESE.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we capped at 70? I'm not, like, the METCO grant caps us at 70?
How much we get in the METCO grant is what caps us at around 70.
Is there a way to increase that, or?
So right now there isn't. There are other towns looking to start their own METCO programs, and the issue is funding. Every year we fight for funding through our lobby day, because we are level funded every year, and every year we have to go ask for more money to cover, especially transportation costs, because transportation costs are always rising, and so is the cost of education. So we've been getting increases for the past 3 years, but sometimes we're just level funded. Like we don't get the increase.
So this money comes into Scituate's coffers?
Yes.
I see.
And this comes, by the way, into the Scituate Public Schools accounts. This is not money that can be touched by the town. Is that correct, Ms. Crawford?
This is Scituate Public Schools, yes. And we have to spend it within the school year.
So how much does it actually cost to educate and transport a child, like a Scituate kid? Like, is this covering their costs? I guess that's my question.
It is, because we're essentially double dipping, and they're getting Chapter 70 in addition to the METCO grant.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't know what the per pupil expenditure is. There is something for Scituate on how much we supposedly allocate per student expenditure, and it used to be 5,000 something or other, but that's a while ago. I'm not current.
I don't have the current number on that.
Well, and you would expect this one to be a little higher because obviously their transportation is further, so it will cost a little more. It's probably more specialized. But it would just be interesting to know, like, could we stretch that money a little further and have some more kids or not? But
some towns have increased their student population by eating some of that cost. But right now, all we can have is what we have in our grant.
And is that a school budget moment, or is that a town? The town doesn't allocate that the school should eat some of that cost, right?
The town gives the school a certain amount of money out of its budget, and then the school is autonomous in how it spends that money.
Right, that's what I thought. So we can't really tell them. I mean, we could say, okay, town, give the school more money for METCO, and they could give them more money, but they can't say you can only spend it on METCO.
Correct.
Correct.
So it's hard for us to make that recommendation.
Well, I think, you know, I don't know. I mean, we should talk about it. We're not allowing poor Ms. Crawford to finish.
Yeah, sorry.
We've asked you
We're
like
all so
100
excited
questions.
about it. That's why.
And I have a couple of students on here who are willing to speak on
wonderful.
their experience, and I didn't want to keep them too long, and I'm wondering if they're still on here. I just wanted to show you the METCO participants and METCO partner districts, what the graduation rates are for students who participate in this program at 98% compared to 67% in Boston.
Oh.
And that's a 2014 number. I need to get updated information. This is a percent enrolling in higher education. And that's not to say that this doesn't include kids who choose to enroll in trade schools, etc. And as Dr. Jane McGuire said, we're preparing students to become global citizens for the world that they will go out into in participating in this program. And people often refer to METCO as a busing program, and really it's the people program, right? We're creating relationships. And I'm going to open the floor to our student voices. And I went a little bit past what I was going to do. I'm going to stop sharing.
And would your student voices be Delina McKenzie, Ms. Crawford?
That is Delina and Mackenzie. So Delina is an 11th grader, and she's a Boston resident student, and Mackenzie is sharing her perspective as a resident student of color.
And Delina and Mackenzie, you both are co-hosts. If you want to unmute yourselves, you most certainly can.
So the question is, how has being this is for Delina first, how has being a Boston resident student in Scituate's METCO program impacted you academically and social emotionally?
Hey, hi, my name is Delina. That's what you already introduced, so I'm just going to introduce again. My name is Delina Gerber-Hewitt. I'm an 11th grader, and I've been in the METCO program since the 2nd grade, and I went to Wampatuck Elementary School. Wait, can you ask the question again?
Oh, you're muted.
How has being a Boston resident student in Scituate's METCO program impacted you academically and social emotionally? And Mackenzie's going to have a similar question.
I would say, like, in the beginning, academically, I already noticed, because I came in 2nd grade, and I think METCO starts kindergarten or 1st grade, either one. So I came basically right in the beginning to kind of start my whole high school or education career through METCO. And immediately I noticed when I started in the 2nd grade, just the difference that I was receiving in Boston compared to Scituate. And I went to a private Catholic school in Boston. And I just noticed that the kids here, they were kind of doing a lot of things that I wasn't used to. So kind of straight off the bat, kind of put me at a little bit of a disadvantage. I feel like I had been like kind of struggling behind a lot of other students because everything was kind of more normal to them and I was still getting readjusted. So coming in at like 7, 8 and kind of already feeling like a little bit behind, that kind of stuck with me throughout my years in Scituate Public Schools. And I'm Ethiopian, like I'm Ethiopian American. And so also immediately coming into the school, I was put into ELL programs when English was my first language. So I was kind of already put at a disadvantage even in the classroom community. being that I could speak English perfectly well, but I was taking extra classes on how to read and write and take standardized tests, even though I knew how to speak English perfectly fine and scored perfect scores every time. So that kind of set the tone for the rest of my kind of experience. I think we can all like kind of perceive from just being elementary school. And then towards middle school, everything was fine. I would always say I was more of like an A-B student. But throughout like my experience, I started seeing how I was never really pushed to take harder classes. I was never pushed to really like my limits. I was more always advocated for to stay in my comfortable level. And that I didn't really start to advocate for myself until I got to high school. And I noticed that, okay, like these are the 4 years that's going to count to get to my next 4 years because I want to pursue a higher education. And so it wasn't until sophomore year when I got recommended to take my first honors math class by my math teacher. And I just remember the moment he was like, oh, I think you can take honors pre-calculus. And I looked at him and I was like, a teacher has never, ever looked at me and said, you can take a harder class or a class that I never even put into my brain, because it was kind of just like, it was kind of given to me to be comfortable. So I never broke out of that shell. I kind of just stayed put where I was because I was on that track. And so once I saw that he had that kind of that belief in me and kind of put that strength behind my education and behind my intelligence, I really started to take control of, you know, my next 2 years. And so I advocated to get myself in more honors classes and to take an AP class. And I realized that I did that all by myself. No teacher really helped me with any of that. And that's when I realized, like, your education is in your hands and you can't depend on any other teacher. But I realized that I never even knew I didn't have that support. I thought no one else had that support. But when I would talk to other students, both from Scituate and from METCO, I noticed that it was more students from METCO saying that no teachers really asked me, like, do I want to take a harder class? Or do I have interest in different level, just different education? And so then that became transparent to me that METCO kids don't get the same opportunities, even though we're given this opportunity, this great opportunity to go out of our inner city and experience a different education. We don't even get the best benefit of that unless it's us doing it at the table. And that's become like one of my biggest pushes. And academically, it's definitely challenged me taking harder classes, but I realized like you have to struggle to get better. And I was never struggling because I always took easy classes. And so when I got towards high school and started taking those harder classes, I began to realize how important it is to be challenged at a younger age. And so like that's been my whole mission really with all the different committees I'm on, to kind of push this this advocacy for kids that look like me in younger classes, to give them that courage that they can take harder classes. So when it gets to high school, they're prepared and they know that they have a seat at the table and that they deserve to be in every single class their friends are, whether they live here in Boston or they're a Scituate resident.
Wonderful. Yeah, advocating for yourself is especially as you move into a four-year college, I think you said you wanted to go to. That's going to be super, super important, like for every single class. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of a good skill. Unfortunately, it sounds like the way that you had to learn it might have been difficult. I don't want to cut you off. I could listen to you the rest of the evening, but we do have things to do. And we want to hear from, I'm sorry, what is your name?
Mackenzie.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know why it's together. Sorry.
Okay. We also want to hear from you, Mackenzie. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Go ahead.
Mackenzie, the question for you is, how has having a METCO program impacted you academically and social emotionally as a resident student of color?
I feel like having a METCO program has affected me more social emotionally than it is academically, because even though we do have METCO students, I'm still usually in a classroom by myself, like as the only minority student. So it's still like awkward to talk about things in class and discuss certain topics because I feel like some things are more directed towards me than directed towards the lesson. But social emotionally, I'd say that in the past 2 years, I'm a senior this year. So in my junior and senior year, I feel like I've become more connected to METCO. Before it was like the METCO program, and then it was like me. And yes, I am a person of color, but I live in Scituate, so I don't get on the bus every morning and come to school at 5 a.m. I go to school at like 7:15, like everybody else does who lives in Scituate. So it's kind of was like different, and I was separated from them. But I feel like the incidents that happened in our school brought me closer to them, and I connected more with them, which also drew me away from like my elementary school friends and my middle school friends in Scituate, because I felt like I was closer to my friends from that came through the METCO program than I was to them, because they didn't really not so get along, but they didn't really like try or be outgoing to connect with people from the METCO program. So like I kind of used the METCO program like as a crutch. Like I would go to Miss Michelle's office or find Miss Michelle wherever she was. Delina and I are very good friends. I'd always try to find them wherever they were in school. And so social emotionally, like that helped me a lot to get through my junior and senior year, as to where in middle school, I felt like I really didn't have anybody who like looked like me and who had the same culture as me, or who had the same like kind of aspect of life or living life as I am Cape Verdean. And so I feel like METCO just like, it brought upon an experience that I don't think I would be able to experience. And I feel like it also drive me to go to an historically Black college. So I picked a historically Black college because I feel like living in Scituate, I was like deprived of that, and like kind of being around people who look like me and people who like can help me build my confidence. And so I feel like METCO has pushed me towards that.
That's amazing. So what do you think would bridge the, it sounds like you have kind of like two groups of friends almost.
Yeah,
So,
that's what it's like.
Okay. So what do you think might bridge that before we have to close up? I'm very curious.
Well, we talked about doing things, Miss Michelle, we talked about like kind of bringing the communities together. Like if we have like kind of like parties almost, but COVID friendly, obviously, but kind of something like that, or like something where you can gather. We talked about doing like during Black History Month, doing little like activities or events, or even like having people from the high school go down to the middle school and the elementary school and kind of like build relationships with them, whether you're a Scituate resident or whether you're a METCO student. It kind of, I feel like that would just like push for change almost, and kind of bring the diversity. And so you're not like waiting till you get to high school and you're outgoing enough to be able to talk to somebody, where like if I was in the high school, I could build a relationship with somebody who's in the middle school or who's in elementary school, and then we could like have that bond. And that way, like even when I graduate, I can still talk to Delina, and I can still talk to some of the freshman kids and some of the middle school kids. I honestly only know the kids from the high school, and I probably couldn't name a single kid from the middle school or any elementary school.
Thank you so much. I mean, both of you are very eloquent, and also have given us this perspective of young people in Scituate of color, that are of color. So, I mean, it's not particularly eye-opening for me, but I think it is very informative of the tone or the atmosphere that is that's present in town amongst young people. So it's extremely helpful.
Nikki, before we move on, can I ask a question?
Go right ahead.
So thank you, Delina and Mackenzie. I was wondering, Michelle, to Delina's point about the need for self-advocacy and perhaps different treatment from teachers, whether consciously or unconsciously. Does the program provide regular either training or consultations with teachers that teach METCO students on empathy, bias, etc., so that they're given the same opportunities, whether for honors classes or whatever else it may be?
So the district-wide, we're working on that as a district. And we're at the very beginning of this conversation, and it's going to be an ongoing conversation around how we address issues of access, because this is an issue of access. How we are equitable to all students. So we're actually completing an equity cycle through the Harvard Rides program, which is reimagining integration and diversity in schools, of which Delina is one of the members of our team. It's about a 10-person team comprised of students and people who work in the district, including district leaders. And we're working on ourselves. Recently, we had a DEI training with Khalees Warnham for our district leaders, and we're working on getting staff ready so that we could better facilitate conversations amongst ourselves and to be comfortable in having the discussion amongst ourselves first before we bring students into it, because this is an emotionally heavy, and we don't want to do more damage than, and everybody's well-intentioned, and we need to be conscious, like, these are people's babies that we are working with, and we want to do right by them, and in doing right by them, we need to start within first.
Thank you all so much.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. I look forward to hearing through Ms. Crawford what you guys do, and hopefully you'll encourage other friends to come and visit us, maybe yearly or bi-yearly, to tell us what's going on and what kind of things are happening and how you're feeling about being a student or a young person in Scituate. So thank you very, very, very much. Truly appreciate it. And thank you, Ms. Crawford, for coming as well. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you for having us. And thank you, ladies, for having the bravery and to share your stories once again with the Scituate community.
Very helpful. Thank you, Delina Mackenzie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saturday.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Wow. That was amazing. All right. One more thing that we wanted to mention before moving into liaison reports, and it's kind of a liaison report, I think, Ms. Yassine, about Indigenous Peoples Day. Did you want to say a few words about that? Oh, no, that's in new business. Is that
No,
right?
that would be a new business. This is
Gotcha,
not a
gotcha,
public
gotcha.
comment.
Okay, so liaison reports. Would anyone like to give a liaison report? I can start that too. All right, so since I'm also president of Scituate Pride, we start our Scituate Pride celebration this Friday with an opening performance with Toast at the, what do they call it? The gazebo? I call it the gazebo, but people call it something else. The bandstand in the harbor. And a moment of silence for those who've lost their lives to AIDS, and also for the members of the trans community that we've also lost to violent acts.
That's June 4th, Nikki?
That's June 4th.
Did you guys know that's graduation night too?
We did not, I think we did, but for some reason that was our only option for participating. Okay. And I think it happens, you know, it's not during graduation, so it could be an option for something to do with folks visiting or whatever.
Oh, good. Is it earlier?
I think I think it's like 5 or 6.
Okay. Okay.
And then we have a bunch of other things. You can go to ScituatePride.com. We have Robin Oakes, who's going to come and talk about bisexuality. My friend Arlene Isaacson will be the marshal this year. She's the lead lobbyist for gay marriage. We shared office space back in the day when I was lawyering. And Representative Joan Machino will walk with us as well on the 26th. That will be our Pride Walk. We also have Reverend Stewart's Church that will join us on our walk, and also the Trinitarian Congregational Church will attend as well. So we have a lot of community members, organizations, there's businesses flying flags. So we have a lot of the community involved this year, and I encourage everyone to come and celebrate with us.
If you haven't driven by the Unitarian Church on First Parish, I highly recommend it. They have like wrapped themselves in a rainbow. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of awesome.
Did they do that today?
Yeah, I didn't see it over the weekend. And when I drove my
I think,
daughter to school this morning, it was there.
I didn't see it either, but I didn't pick her up. So
it's
pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's done a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Ruth or Maura, would you like to give us your liaison report?
I'll
more
go
about
after
it.
Ruth. Go ahead, Ruth.
Well, just real quick, again, SituateStride.org, they're taking a bit of a break during summer, though I think that, as always, people are contactable if people have questions. Scituate Stride also wants to support other organizations who are doing things in Scituate, so giving them your information and they will publicize on Facebook as well as on their website.
Wonderful. And select person Curran.
And I'll just add that we had a very brief meeting last week. The board reorganized and just did a lot of routine things. So we have a new chair. Karen Connolly is the chair of the select board, effective immediately, and Karen Canfield is the vice chair. So she can fill in with knowledge on any issues when Karen Connolly is not present. And then Andrew Goodrich is the clerk, so he gets to read correspondence and take good notes. And then I also wanted to bring up, since I hear this often, that, you know, people talk a lot about zoning in this town, and the Zoning Board of Appeals is appointed by the Board of Selectmen. And I believe we've got 3 folks that are walking off the zoning board. So if any of you have any good contacts, connections that you feel would be appropriate, please encourage them to apply. A lot of times having a legal background helps, or a real estate background helps, just to understand all the vernacular. And it's a pretty detailed board, but it's a really, really important board. So forward any information to some folks, and we'd love to interview them and get some new folks on the board. So I just thought I would share that because I know it comes up often, that it's an important aspect of the town. And that's it.
Laura, can I ask a question? I mean, what status as far as going forward to replacing Lucia, which will be very hard to do, but.
Oh, yes, sorry, forgot about, I had the opportunity to say goodbye to her last week, so she will be missed. Bob and I talked about it a little bit. We want to put it back out there now that folks know exactly what the committee is a little bit more about. We want to make sure that it's an employee who is active and, you know, has a, you know, preferably a full-time role, so they can really represent views a little bit more appropriately, because I think some of our other applicants were more part-timers. So Bob, and you, I see you shaking your head, so that's good. I think we're putting, you know, the request out there to see who would like to step up and hopefully participate.
Right.
Awesome.
And
Anyone
then,
else?
Nikki, not necessarily a question, but I was just digging around on the town website and I saw, I think it's the master plan with recommendations for the town. And I would just encourage folks to dig into it. I think I need to some more so I could have questions, but in particular section about zoning and housing and what percentage is, you know, single family dwelling and what that does to our potential population and diversity of that population going forward, whether folks who are single or more senior living on their own, young families, diverse families moving to Scituate. I just thought that piece, at least I kind of just zoned in on that, did have a decent equity lens. And so I would just encourage everybody to dig into it. I was surprised pleasantly by it, but I was just curious about the next steps for those recommendations. But we can talk about that another time, just so I can maybe educate myself on that whole process.
Yeah, and that would be a good thing to review with whoever's meeting with the planning department, because they put that together. So Kyle Boyd and his team, lots of public comment, but also an extension of that, Celia, is the housing production plan, which has also been solidified and approved and put into, you know, official documentation, if you will. So there's even more referencing to affordable housing there and the needs and how to move forward a little bit more as well. So that's another document. So thanks for bringing that up.
So,
Can I clarify, Celia? Sorry.
Is there a link to
that's what I'm asking, because if I want to, that's exactly what I want, Nikki, you know where I'm going with this. So I just,
I'll find it.
No, you don't even have to, but it's a Scituate master plan, correct? I want to get the name correct. I'll be able to find the link. And in fact, we used to use that link in 7th grade when we were doing a Future Scituate project. And the kids actually had to look through the master plan to find out what the plans were in Scituate for different things. It was a fantastic project-based learning opportunity, taking it to the documents that Scituate has. And again, thank you for reminding me, Celia, because it is, there's a lot to it, but there's sections of it that can be very helpful and informative. And then it's the housing production plan, correct, Maura? And if I've got those names right, I'll put the links in the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep, you're well ahead of me, Ruth.
Well, you know where I was going with that one, Nikki.
Oh yeah,
I love links.
Street. We're definitely on the same street.
Love links.
So wonderful. Anyone else have anything else they'd like to share for an update? Okay, let's get into working groups.
Actually, Nikki, I do have one quick thing to add.
Oh, go right ahead.
And I don't want to sound cryptic. I did speak to Jamil Adams today.
Mm-hmm.
And Ruth, I know you and I traded emails, but he moves quick, right? So he texted me right back, and then before I knew it, I was talking to him on Zoom late this afternoon. And the reason why I wanted to talk to him was I wanted to, and I had had some conversations with others on the committee about the freedom teams, that he talked about a few weeks back, which I think piqued a lot of our interests. And I guess my reference to being cryptic is that he wants to do it, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but he wants to do it, and he wants to move forward, and he wants to move forward quickly. So I'll kind of leave it at that. But for those of us that have had an opportunity to go out and just Google Franklin Freedom Team or Hopkinton Freedom Team or Waltham or any of these communities where he's spearheaded this, he wants to do the same for Scituate, which is really cool. And obviously there's a number of things that will most likely need to fall into place, but he's pretty bullish on it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll reach out to him as well and see if we can get him to be on our calendar. Is there any action item that he's looking for from us?
Not from us. I think he's gonna start reaching out to different members of the community, basically.
Awesome.
Would it be helpful for us to put it on our list of recommendations to the select board, just to sort of show our support more than if we would like to do that? So I don't want to speak for everyone, but
we haven't finalized our.
It's a great question.
My suggestion would be that we wait on this. I mean, I think what's going to happen is that, again, we don't make any new committees like a freedom team. That's not what we do as in this board, as part of this committee. We can, as people, help support that happening. We can remain informed about that happening. We can be helpful with that happening. But I think that's going to take place in another space.
Yeah, that's right.
And individuals of us, yes, but again, not more than 3 of us can actually help do any of that. But then when that pulls together and that coalesces, then I would really, one assumes we would then start discussing whether we want to actually have that be our recommendation to fulfill that gap that we were talking about over so many meetings. Because that's what it really is talking about, is how do we fill a gap about having a need within our community that is not only police-based. That it will include police, but it's not starting only there. And I think that the way Jamil explained it last time was that the chief of police would be a part of this freedom team. But again, with the other pieces of support that are supporting whoever is experiencing a crisis or a challenge, that's really the focus of it. But I think it has to happen first, and then we can support it. We can't support something that doesn't exist yet.
I'd love him to come back and update us on his progress, as he continues to move forward in the progress, if he can come and give us an update, and so we all know where he's at.
Well,
yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, I certainly would imagine that we're going to throw our support behind him and help him to the extent that we can. But it's his idea, right? So, and he's
Well,
been.
I had the same, I mean, I brought it up, but it sounds like he's done exactly this. He's seen and done this exactly other places.
That's what I mean. He's executed on the concept in multiple communities. So, and I'm intrigued and pretty happy about it.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. Good luck to him. Seems like he has it in a form that's a bit more digestible. Okay, update on working groups. Anyone want to begin?
Sure, I can start, Nikki.
Okay, great.
So Bob, Ruth, and I met to talk about DPW. I think what I'll share to start is that for the basis of our future conversation with that department head, we kind of broke it into 4 different buckets, and we're working now to come up with questions. But the 4 buckets that I just wanted to share are, the first one being employee relationships and training. Since DPW is a pretty public-facing department. The second being equitable service. So just ensuring we're providing the same level and prioritization of services across the town, regardless of neighborhood or background. Then it was hiring, retention, and advancement. So looking more internally at the department. And then finally, procurement. So this is obviously hiring and procurement span the whole town, but we thought, narrowing it in on DPW, in particular procurement, because they do a lot of that. So that's where we are now, and we have a number of questions that we've started to formulate. So we'll dig in further, and happy then to share with the group for things that may have not crossed our minds. But those are the areas where we're digging in.
Okay. And I know that I need to review the DPW meeting notes because I wasn't able to make any of those meetings, so I will do that. Anyone else?
I'd say we're in a similar boat with regards to Board of Health, social services, facts. We've met a couple of times now, and I think the last time we met was probably over a week ago, maybe a week ago Monday. And I think at this point we have a pretty good handle on how we want to approach, a meeting with Erica Soros and Anne-Marie Galvin and so forth. I do think we're going to need to meet one more time, would be my guess. Right, Bob, Natasha? Yeah. Kate? I would like to set a goal that at the end of our next meeting, I think we'll be ready to go and have an approach for the actual in-person or virtual discussion.
And there was.
Can I ask a question, Nikki?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Are all your like the questions that you're all formulating, are they on that master project planner? So if I went in there and kind of looked at it, are they in there at all or not yet? Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. They're still. We're really considering them still. I'm the next one up, I think, anyway, with the Scituate Police Department one, and we are still formulating a rough document. I think that's our discussion after we go through this, to say what is our next step with these questions. Should we be posting them for everybody to review and give overall comments before we take the next step and move forward in scheduling meetings?
Okay, sounds great.
I think it's been very rough.
Yeah, our committee too has, because of the actual people we're dealing with, Erica and Anne-Marie particularly, are so knowledgeable about this already, and we felt that they were going to bring a lot to us. So we have not formulated true questions, as more just like, let's have a discussion and kind of meet them where they're at, and we almost felt like maybe some brainstorming even with them, like how could they do more and stuff. So our format is for them is going to be really, I think, different than what you would do for the police department or the DPW, right? So I'm not sure we can even put that on Slack because it's like it's a
yeah. I was just curious. I wasn't asking as it had to be, a necessity. I was just curious if it was housed anywhere. Okay.
And again, as far as the police department one, I would say we're similar to Celia. We've got questions. We're still kind of honing them out. Ours come in the buckets of equity, hiring, and community outreach. And we pushed a lot of questions about procedures and policies to another time, because there was a lot there, and it didn't seem necessarily as discussable as it was, here, what are facts that we should know? Because I think that as a committee, we really do need better background information about some of the very sensitive policies and procedures that we're concerned about happening in completely inappropriate ways throughout our country. What are our policies and procedures in Scituate? And a lot of it will be based on Gov rules. So it's not as much a discussable thing. And so we put that to one side, that it's going to go away, but to have a better discussion to focus on these other questions.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was able to attend the social services, public safety, and the meetings once. I didn't get to the follow-up meetings, but I think that I believe anything's possible. I'm naive that way, but we can make recommendations short of making sort of like the Reverend Stewart said about meeting with people and finding out what's going on. Like there should be some sort of meeting with these people to find out what's going on. And I don't know their involvement with the select board, if they ever present anything to the select board, or if they, I don't know if there's an interaction, but there may be a recommendation that says that, on a yearly basis. Oh, you do?
No, yeah, they do. When they have new initiatives, they do. And usually, like in the past, just like for instance, Anne Marie would come in with an update of facts, different things that they're seeing in town. I'll be honest with you, she hasn't come in the past year. And I think a lot of that's just, I think COVID has obviously put a wrench in a lot of the things that we normally would do. But they typically do, Nikki, come in and give updates as to any new initiatives that they're working on.
That's good to hear. Okay.
Well, I guess my question is, before we move from these, these are working groups based on the project that we've got with the town hall. Do you feel that people want to put these on Slack once we kind of give them a go round and let everybody see what it is, where we look like we're going? Because then we do need to think about scheduling meetings. That's the intent, is moving forward there.
Yeah, and it's tricky because we only have one meeting in July and one in August.
We have another meeting. Well, that's it. But if we have another meeting, if we have 2 more meetings this month.
Right.
So if we post these for people to discuss, then to kind of a final go round, and people add anything they want to add, then it's free for those people to go and start scheduling their meetings. We don't need to wait anymore.
Yeah, I think that people in the meeting can schedule their meetings whenever they're ready, right? Hopefully it would be, they'd be talking about dates at the next, round, to potential dates at least.
And the question is, do you want people to be able to see the questions first, for our committee to see the questions first and be able to input any further questions? And after that, then the small group is free to start scheduling.
Right. No, I agree with that.
Are we comfortable with just allowing the subcommittees to create the questions and just go with that? The subcommittees consist of 3 or 4 of us, so I would just wonder if that's sufficient for us to be able to just create the questions and move ahead. It just seems more efficient, but certainly if people, I don't know to what degree people feel like they have to have additional input beyond what the subcommittees.
I would agree too, because I think I trust all of you. We've discussed this enough to kind of understand what we're all trying to achieve, right? And so in the essence of keeping it moving, I agree with that as well. I don't know what others think.
I agree with that. I think in the past, when we've put a lot of information on Slack and given people time, everyone trusts everyone on the committees and on the groups. So I think it does slow the process down a little bit. So I agree with trusting the subcommittee to, formulate and finalize their questions. And then we decide, are the next meetings going to be in person, or what's the next next step.
It's probably quicker if we see something that's been excluded to go back and say, hey, can you just ask them about this instead of taking weeks to get a perfect list, right?
Yeah, I think Slack is helpful after your next meeting of the working groups, so that if you do see something, you can email somebody from that working group and say, oh, I saw this on Slack. Don't forget this, or whatever it is that we need to say. But I think the two discussions at the next round of working groups should be finalizing or getting close to finalizing questions, and then getting dates from the working group members that would work, so that we can then bring them to, whoever we're going to be talking to see if any of those dates work for them. So just scheduling it could take a whole month. So let's try to get dates, or a few dates, and then we can share them with Anne Marie and whoever else we want to bring in to do this. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. Any other next steps?
Nikki, are you going to update us on your two working groups?
I don't have an update, except that I have, I guess there's some projects going on at the high school where they're interviewing people based on whatever subject they chose. So I've been doing interviews with some high school students about diversity and racism and the town and all this other stuff. And from that, there are people now emailing me like, when is the group coming? And all of that. I have been extraordinarily busy. But I do need to send out the kind of application to get some people in and asking questions, and to have like an initial meeting before the summer. That's my goal. And there are some people who are already like, I'll sign up for this one, or I'll sign up for that one. So I need to move a little more quickly with that. So I will, before the week's end, send out, first dates before the end of June for those two working groups, right? Is that what they call them? Yes.
Yep.
And I will obviously send it out to everyone too, so they know and can come if you have time. All right. Anyone else? Working group information, next step information? No. Okay. We're doing really well tonight. Okay, so the update on the Hingham Unity Council survey we're not going to do tonight, because I spoke with Christina Blackburn, who's kind of in charge of getting all the information in and condensing in a way that we can kind of understand. We did, Tom and Connor Doherty have worked diligently to kind of put it in a way that we can kind of digest it better. But Christina's saying she needs more time to kind of get all of the full picture information. And so we're going to wait on that tonight. And then administratively, I think we know when our next meetings are, the 15th and the 29th of June, the 13th of July, and the 18th of August. I see a star next to 6/29, so I'm assuming that the select board meeting is the following Tuesday. Let me see what that would be. And if that's the case, we have a star next to a quarterly report. So the following Tuesday would be July 6th. So that means our meeting on the 29th, we have to take out all those proposed potential recommendations, projects, etc., and see which ones we're going to lead with for the next, or what we're going to say for the next select board meeting on the, I think it must be the 6th, because we have an asterisk next to the 29th of June. But then we have an asterisk next to July 13th. So that feels like a back-to-back reporting. Oh, was that because we were going to do something sooner than the July presentation? I'm not sure why we have that there.
I don't know why the 13th is starting.
We do, just remind everybody, on the 15th, Joan Machino will be joining us. So I have a feeling that will be a working group update as well. But on the 29th, we really have to kind of, I'm dig into recommendations, because usually the last time we had like the initial set of recommendations and then we had a final list of recommendations. So I feel like the 29th, we should, the 15th, we might just do a brainstorming of recommendations and maybe finalize them on the 29th. Do we know when the select board meeting is for July? Or is there? There's no select board meeting for July.
You're saying there is.
No, there is. Hold on. There is. I'm going through, I have the worst calendar on my phone, so.
Oh, me too.
I apologize.
That's okay. You can let us know. We're gonna move on to new business. And
I just wanted to say about the recommendations, it's important that, I think it's important we remember what Karen was telling us, that we have to have not just an idea, but also have done like the research for how to do the idea. So it's good to look at what we're doing and what we're working on rather than just like a wish list kind of thing, right? We have to have that background.
right, yeah, we need to flesh it out a little bit more. And, you know, even if like for the safe space norms, the new chair, select person Connolly, asked, what is that? And what's an example, so that we know, you know, basically what you're talking about. So we may have to have recommendations and maybe attachments to what we're talking about, or some sort of blurb from an article, or where this idea is coming from. So I think our next meeting, we should be throwing out or taking out the kind of list that we have now in our project plan or proposed projects, and then you know, just brainstorming and just kind of throwing out what's in our head, and then finalizing those on the 29th with, you know, documents. For instance, Vice Chair Secor brought up the freedom, what was it? Freedom groups? Freedom
team.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, obviously the follow-up to that was to draw Mr. Adams in a little bit more so that we can kind of see what's going on, or he can be in a collaboration with the town over, you know, publicizing that, or whatever it is that he says he's going to need. So the idea, and then the people or group that needs to kind of flesh it out. And handouts. Handouts are great, and they move meetings very quickly because you can read them before or after. So keep
Yeah, and
that.
I think if you oh, go ahead, Natasha.
I was gonna say, I think sometimes we are the group to flesh it out. Like, yeah, I mean, you had that great example, right, then Nikki, right, about the what is safe space, right? We're the group who finds examples of that and brings that to them. So it's not just like, I think we do need to talk about it next meeting, because if we're going to be the group that finds that, we need to figure out how we're going to do that, or assign someone to do it. It shouldn't fall all on your shoulders, but work out that sort of a working group, right? It's
Right.
Following up on those different things like that.
Right. Well, I think what will happen is that, you know, Miss Risha will have something that she's like, I think we really should do this or whatever. And then, you know, if it's her idea, then she would also send to the group, here's a blurb that I found, or tell us how it could be done. I'm imagining that's how it would go, right? So if we go back to Mr. Secor's example, you know, I'm assuming he's having conversations with Mr. Adams and would be able to flesh that one idea out in a way that translates into what our charge is. So, and if people need help, I think they should definitely ask for help. But let's see what happens. Let's brainstorm next time, get kind of the preliminary, throw everything against the wall, and then pluck each one individually to come up with that kind of final list.
And if I can provide some perspective, you know, historically when committees come, so say for instance, Tom Ray is talking to Jamil, and you make a recommendation, just give, you know, a little bit of an overview of what Jamil's working on and the initiative, and obviously it's his initiative, not ours, but that you support it, that you could recommend that the Board of Selectmen, you know, whatever, meet with the school committee, understand what the implications are, you know, and hopefully vote to support that type of a initiative, right? So that if we can keep all the ideas like that, like very succinct, I think the board would really appreciate that.
And I can also see that a lot of what we're going to be doing may not yet be recommendations, but updates on what we're looking at. For instance, the Freedom Team, I don't feel I can recommend it until it really gets formed and that there's something to recommend there. But to note that we are following and being a liaison with them, trying to figure out what they're doing and offer our supportive advice, perhaps, if that is wished, then that's what we update with rather than giving a recommendation yet. And as far as recommendations, to me, they should not come up next meeting. To me, these are things that we should already have, and that something then presents to us for all of us to agree on before they come up as a recommendation. So for instance, we already have ongoing ones. We already have ongoing things like the bathrooms, but nobody has looked into that any further to develop a report that we would then give. The same thing would be on the developing, information to them about what is a safe space norm and how to go about developing that. That would be something somebody would say, yeah, I'll pick that up, I'll run with that, I'll give you guys a presentation, see if you can support that presentation that we would then recommend it. But I think it has to be something that comes to us in advance of when we're recommending it to them. So time-wise, recommendations need to kind of develop a little bit more within us organically before we move them out.
So do you guys want to be on the 7:20 agenda? Is that what you're thinking? Or so the board meets 7:06 and 7:20.
So yeah, so that makes sense. So then that's why we have an asterisk on the 29th and the 13th, because that would be the Tuesday before each of those. So that makes a lot of sense.
I think our asterisk could have kind of gotten moved around over time too. So I can't think we would actually have
more meetings.
Yeah. I think that may have been one of those things.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think I mentioned to you, Ms. Justine, was that we probably, because we only have one meeting each, we probably have to work on recommendations for both meetings at the same time. So agree that on the 6th, that we're going to move forward with XYZ recommendations. And I do think we need to review the proposed project plans and list of recommendations we have kind of running and add to that. But I think we should say, okay, we're going to go with this because it's going to require some explaining on the 6th. We're going to go with these 5 things and we're going to flesh them out on the 6th. And then we're going to go with XYZ on the 20th. And I think
maybe this will be helpful for you, Nikki and everybody. So 7:06 and 7:20 are the Board of Selectmen meetings. So I don't know if you need to be on both agendas. You certainly can if you need to be, but I'm not sure you want to be on both. Don't feel pressured to have recommendations every time you come before the board. You can come with an update that says, hey, this is all the progress we've made, and you guys have made so much progress. It takes a lot of work to develop these questions, to meet with these different department heads, to analyze what they said in the survey. So maybe it's, you implemented the survey, you got X amount of responses, you're still going through it, or you've summarized it to XYZ. It doesn't necessarily, there's no pressure to come every quarter and say, these are our recommendations. What the goal is at the end of the first year that we have some good solid recommendations, right? So I just want to relieve a little pressure on everybody and make sure that, that expectation isn't there at every quarter that we have a new recommendation that needs to be implemented or executed. So hopefully that helps.
It does help. I mean, it definitely helps and it takes the pressure off. And I think we did 2 things last time. We had recommendations and then we had what we're up to and trying to let you know where we are with setting up and things. I think we should do that again. I think that's really helpful. But yes, let's review those project plans and initial kind of running list of recommendations, add to those as you go through your working groups work. If ideas pop up or what have you, I mean, it might be good to add to those when we come back on the 15th, we can really kind of get into it a bit more.
Nikki, can I mention the 15th? So At least my understanding, I know that when the governor declared the state of emergency, they said that we could meet remotely because of COVID when they declared the state of emergency. And then when they lifted the state of emergency as of June 15th, they also lifted our ability to meet entirely remotely. So my understanding is, is that we actually wouldn't be able to continue to meet sort of in this form. We'd actually, and I'm not sure exactly how it works. I don't know if you know, Maura, just some percentage of us would have to actually be meeting in person. I
didn't get that. Stephen Moan brought that up yesterday too. So and I'll double check with Jim, but not that I doubt you, but I haven't seen the verbiage yet, Bob. So if we have to go back to in-person meetings, the board did pass a policy 2 or 3 years back allowing remote access. So if the town does have remote access policies, people can attend remotely. However, a quorum has to be present in person. So a quorum has to be in a room together. And if there are 2 or 3 or whatever stragglers that need to dial in, I think that's the only way we can accommodate it right now, or we'll have to figure out how to do a Zoom. It's a little dicey to figure out how to do that in-person meeting and have a Zoom.
Right.
So historically, what we've done is people would dial in to either conference number or somebody's cell phone, and so you can hear and converse. And it's usually an exception, not the rule.
Well, so the other thing to add is that I think that there's pending legislation to extend this, our ability to do it remotely, and to extend that until September 1st.
Oh, good.
So I mean, I just was on the
I'll look
government
into
website.
that. I'll look into that. I did have a conversation with Select Person Canfield a while back, and about a bunch of other stuff, but she mentioned that when we return to in-person, that the location that we would be assigned would be the new senior center. So there's apparently a room there designated for us to have our meeting. So I'll look into
I think what she was saying, that it's an option for you. You don't have to. We have a number of meeting spaces, Nikki. So nobody's advised me that there's one room for a DEI. So we have rooms in the library, with a Board of Selectmen room, many, many places that you can choose. Senior center would be great and be nice, and if it's available, but I usually we'll work with Lorraine to identify what spaces are available for our meeting dates. So I don't know, Ruth, or if that's something you want to take on and just reach out to Lorraine and see what's available for the dates that we have our meetings scheduled, and then you guys can choose a spot that can accommodate all of us.
And hopefully we don't have to worry about it until September.
Yeah, that's a hope. So we keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
And I would send out a message if we actually do need to meet in person. It's not changed before the next meeting. I would send out a note with the agenda. I think that's enough time for people to know where to go. But hopefully they'll extend it.
Well,
But
you could do a little
maybe
bit
we'll all meet each other in person. That would be nice.
Nikki, if we're gonna meet in person, if you could at least let me know a little earlier, because I'll have to find a babysitter.
Oh, that's right.
Because I don't need a sitter when I'm at home, but I will.
Right. Yeah. So I'll look into that and try and figure that out.
And again, it may not have to be everyone that has to be in
right
too, right? I mean, like you were saying, Maura, it's a quorum, so
right.
You may still be able to call in, Natasha.
Quick question. What if we all brought our computers, and those 4 of us at least, because out of 7 us, we'd have to have 4. Again, this whole thing about the numbers always drives me crazy.
Yeah.
4 of us sat with our computers like this, and everybody else calls it. So we'd actually be around a table with the people and the other people. I think, Seth, what do you think? Could we do that?
Seth is a guru on this.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody, let's back up here real quick. So everyone is aware, June 15th right now is our deadline when these open meeting laws of how we're meeting now ends. It is very likely that the governor has put legislation in to push that to September 1st. It has not been approved yet. So we need to plan on the 15th that you have to have a quorum physically in a room. Now, yes, of course, you can bring your computers and you can all Zoom, because as we know, everyone likes being at home and doing these meetings. That may not be the case. With that said, if you invite the public to your meeting, they will have to have computers as well. So remember that. So it's very, very tricky. We're trying to take these two worlds and push it all together. And
why would
as
they
for
have
that
to
senior
have a
Zoom-
computer if they come in person, Seth?
Well, how would the people that Zoom in, if they do, then watch the individuals that don't have the computer?
So we
Because
would
you're gonna
need
open
like
it up.
Yeah, because we don't have a way of putting a spotlight on them, but do they need to be seen if they're not
I could
speaking?
turn my computer to their face. I mean,
No, you need like a movie screen that, you know, like pops up what's on the computer on the screen or something. Anyway, I will talk to you, Seth. I will talk to you, Maura, and Ruth will confab on what Lorraine has to say, and we will quickly as possible let everyone know what transpires with and where you're supposed to be when.
I do have a question for Seth, Nikki.
Yeah.
Which I think will be important because so what is your position, Seth, on Facebook Live? What is the impact of that broadcast when we go on June 15th?
You would need to be, it would have to be a Zoom.
I see.
Interesting. Okay.
It is an absolute mess. Do not understand. It's going to be messy here for a while. We will do our best to try to figure that one out.
How much notice would we
I'll talk
have
to
to
Jim
give?
too, and I know Bob is. I know everybody is.
How much notice would we have to give to move it to a day earlier? To the 14th, our meeting.
That's my birthday.
We can all
do that.
We'll bring cake, Nikki.
We'll bring cake, Nikki. That's it. Candles.
I was hoping for tequila, but that's just me. So yeah, I think
you're on your own there.
Yeah.
As long as
Let's see about all of
anytime
this.
we want, because as long as we have the 48 hours, above 48 hours notice, we can do that. It's just, would we have the quorum of our people
So we need
there?
to start, beating the bushes this week to get an answer on what we're supposed to do and when.
Ms. Chair, if I can interject there real quick, the 14th, we already have 3 other meetings booked. So
Okay.
if you want to do Zoom, it's going to be very tricky to pull off.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All important information to know. And yeah, we will work through this together and figure out where we're supposed to be when and how and all that great stuff. And Seth, we will be counting on you to help us out.
Here for you.
Okay, it is 7:57. And I know at the beginning of the meeting, Ms. Jessie and I talked about having a conversation about Indigenous Peoples Day.
Can I just ask Ms. Curran a quick question?
Yeah.
So there are people, Ms. Curran, as you may know, who are interested in doing Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day. The school committee has agreed to put that on their calendar and remove Columbus Day and put Indigenous Peoples Day there. Many other towns have also within the Commonwealth. There's currently a Senate and House bill pending, but not even addressed. How big a deal is this in Scituate to have the select board support something like this? Does this have to go to a vote? Does this have to be that the select board hears and says, oh yeah, we think that's cool, we'll change our calendar? Do you know how much needs to happen with this?
I don't, off the cuff here, I would imagine
Where would I
that since
find
it's a
that out?
state, what? Excuse me?
How would I find that out? Because other towns
Well,
are
I can
doing
find
it.
out for you. I can find out for you. I would imagine since it's a state holiday, I don't know if the towns have the ability to really change it, but we may, right? I'm not saying no. I just don't know the answer, to be honest.
Well, I
with
know
you.
other towns have, so I don't know.
If they have, then they must be, yeah, then obviously it must be doable. Every town's charter is different though, so I just want to make sure.
Well, I want to put a plug in for the town charter because this is a good reason to look at the charter and the proposed changes which are coming up soon. So
Yeah.
there is a full committee that is discussing the town charter, and it sounds like
But that won't come
having-
before, that won't even come before, Nikki, till next annual town meeting. And so if
Which is
folks want to change
October? Is that
to, no, well, that special town meeting, but I believe the town charter has to be in an annual
Okay.
because it's a larger, quote unquote, a larger audience.
So you have to get on the warrant. So this, okay, so this is what I understand. you have to, in order to have what it is that you want discussed at an annual town meeting, you have to get onto the warrant for
Right.
that meeting. The
Right, but
issue
I
has
don't
to get
know
onto
that.
the warrant for that meeting, which also takes time. So I think if to back into it, here's what I think, and more, hopefully you can fill things in for Ms. Yassin, but number one, find out when the next annual town meeting is. Number two, find out how to get on the warrant for that next town meeting, right? Number three, like organize yourself on how and why you want this day to occur. And then I think everything else, Ms. Select Person Curran will have to lead you through that. But I know that in order to make that big change, you've got to be on that warrant somehow.
So I will double check that. I don't know that it has to go to town meeting.
Yeah, I'll be in touch with you more as far as how that goes.
Yeah,
And
not
does
everything has
anybody
to go
else
to
know-
town meeting.
Yeah.
So
Does anybody else know of anybody else who's working on this as a project in town?
I don't.
That's also what I want. Okay.
So I think the school committee did it from a curriculum aspect too, right? So
they will now begin that discussion. The school committee does not set curriculum, and they were very clear about that. They set the calendar, and the calendar is set. So the curriculum aspects will be developed within the school.
yeah. So I can find out. If you'd given me a heads up, I could have found out earlier, but
That's okay.
I'll find out for our next meeting to see what it entails from a town aspect to get that done.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay. No. Okay.
You went on mute, I think.
Did I?
I think so.
You just
No.
froze briefly, Miss Sanders. You just
Oh,
froze.
can you hear me? Oh, no. Can you?
We can hear you now.
Okay, great. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Wait, I have one more thing under new
Oh.
business.
I just said anything else, anyone else?
Oh,
Okay, go ahead.
You froze when you said anything
Oh,
else.
I see. I get it. Gotcha.
So, hey, I just want for like point of order, point of clarity, just when we're doing the agendas, public comment is really exactly that, right? For somebody from the public to come and tell us, you know, what their thought is, what is their question, blah, blah, blah. It's a minute each. You know, because I think we had a missed opportunity. I loved the METCO presentation tonight. But if we don't put that on the agenda, we don't necessarily get the audience to come and listen and ask questions either. So I just want to make sure that we treat public comment in the manner that it really is intended for, which is for those unknown folks to come in and make a comment and inquiry to us so we can address it. And anything, you know, Nikki or the rest of you want to have a special speaker or someone come in, we really should put it on the agenda so folks know, right? And so folks can be, more than just us, can be educated on METCO and whatnot. So I just wanted to make that observation and share it.
Good. Yeah, I think a lot of people do can't make it to our meeting, but they do go back and watch the meeting because it's a new committee, what's going on. So right now we do have that kind of attention, but I do agree, like, to continue that in the future when we're old news. Yeah, it should be laid out a little bit. Okay. Anyone else? Anything else? Nope. Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I will call the roll. Ms. Dre.
Yes.
Ms. Swope.
Yes.
Vice Chair Secor.
Yes.
Ms. Risha.
Yes.
Reverend Stewart.
Yes.
Ms. Yassin.
Yes.
And I am yes. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting for this evening. And thank you everyone for coming.